Now, the next important contribution of Parsons was the idea of social system. He's publishing this particular book in 1951. And here what is happening is, he's saying that social actions, they exhibit the characteristic of a system. System is not real, but system is just basically a way by which you can look at things. Basically, you can use systemic analysis to understand social action. So that he's trying to bring about. Or that is what something he's trying to point. So this system approach is nothing but a tool to understand reality. If sociology is to be a science, it must resort to systemic analysis. See, in biology, you have you go for these systemic analysis. In biology, you study organisms. But say, for example, I'm studying about human body. So now human body has different systems. You have a digestive system, you have a respiratory system, reproductive system, circulatory system, multiple systems are there. So when I'm studying human body, we are also studying these systems, we are studying the interaction between these systems. Same thing he's saying can be applied for sociology. If sociology has to be a science, we need to have the systemic analysis. That is the reason he's developing this concept of system. Till now, he had been talking about social action, how individual action is important. Next thing, in his general theory towards a general theory of action, he's moving away, drifting a little. He's now focusing on the fact that how this part of culture will lead to value orientation and how there can be different kinds of actions. In this particular phase, now he's talking about the system approach. And he's saying for sociology to be a science, we need to use this approach. So what he's doing now is he's defining what a system is. What are the different features of a system? Very important, because from now onwards, whatever we are going to study, for that we need to understand system, and all these things are mentioned here. So please keep in mind. So what he's saying is, a system is a unified whole, which is made up of interdependent parts. So a system is there. Again, it might have subsystems. Again, each subsystem can be treated as a system. That also is there. Now, system has a particular structure. It is patterned in a particular manner. The way that one part is linked with another. So they're all patterned. So there are some structures over there. So next thing he's saying is, a system has a goal. See, let's say this is a system. So outside the system, you have an environment. So between system and the environment, there's a boundary now. And there exists a symbiotic relationship between the environment and the system. There is a self-equilibrating tendency in the system. So within the system, there can be internal dynamics. There are subsystems. Between them, there will be some flux. So there are internal dynamics, and at the same time, system is in relation to the environment. So from outside also there can be flux. So system tries to move towards equilibrium. That is what it tries to do. Whether it happens or not, again, it is a question here. Then he says every system has certain needs. But these needs, again, he's saying, can be of two types. It can be universal needs, it can be derived needs. Universal needs are those needs which are required by each and every system. Derived needs are those needs which are unique to a particular system. And design needs are not universal. Universal needs applicable everywhere. And these needs, they are referred to as functional prerequisites. Every system has to perform these functional prerequisites, or else it will not be able to survive. So these are the features. Keep in mind, it is a unified whole. It has constituents, it has these subparts, and these subparts can be treated as a system. There's a particular pattern among them, the way they are related to each other. They have certain goals, they have a boundary, they have an environment, they have a self-equilibrating tendencies, internal as well as external dynamics are there. Each and every system has some needs. The needs can be universal needs, it can be derived needs. If I'm talking about universal needs, I mean each and every system has those needs. Design needs is very specific to a particular system. So this is the system now. The cultural patterns that are there in the society, they are the ones who help maintain these patterns, the structure in the system. See, these cultural patterns that exist within the society, they also help an actor derive meaning in a given situation. The cultural patterns that exist within the society, they standardize the response of an actor to a particular situation. Now, during this phase of Parsons' career, he's coming up with the concept of pattern variable. We'll understand that. So before understanding that, we need to understand some of these things. So cultural systems, they are patterning the social system in a particular manner, and they are also impacting an actor's decision or an actor's behavior, an actor's action in a particular situation. They're standardizing the response of an actor in a particular situation. See, when I'm saying all these things, here, Parsons is also getting impacted by other thinkers like Durkheim and Sigmund Freud. Durkheim also was talking about the same thing, that conscience, collective or social facts, they influence the behavior of an individual, and an individual acts according to them, and these things are external, they're constraining. Similar kind of thing is also found in the work of Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud also talks about the same thing in the sense that he says that the life energy is libido. He calls it Eve. That is the one which governs our life. But there is also the presence of superego. It is present outside the individual. Norms, values, shared values, they are the ones which constitute the superego. So life energy gets constrained. The urges, they get constrained because of superego, which consists nothing but norms and values. So Sigmund Freud also talked about similar kind of thing which Durkheim talks about. And now Parsons is also taking their teachings and he's incorporating in his study of sciences. So keep in mind, superego, it constrains the id, it is a life energy, the libido. So action of an individual can get patterned. It can be patterned because of the cultural patterns. Because culture itself is patterned in a particular manner. It is shared by people. So since culture is impacting the actions, so action can also get patterned. That is what Parsons is saying. Since patterns, the cultural patterns are structured in a particular manner, action will also get a pattern in a particular manner. But again, here one more thing is there, that these patterns, they are dualistic in nature. They're not one. They are dualistic in nature, and the actor has to make choices what he has to follow, either this side or that side. So when you hear this, you might be getting reminded of something else. You might be getting reminded of Ferdinand Toni's conception of Gemeinschaft and Gesellschaft, rational will and natural will. Same kind of thing you will also find in Parsons' writings. But Parsons is saying that it is dualistic in nature. These patterns are dualistic in nature, but he says it does not exist along one dimension. According to Toni's, it was in one dimension, it was unidimensional. But Parsons feels it is manifested at multiple levels. It is multidimensional. So basically, what we're trying to say is culture affects the action of an individual, and here, since culture is something which is shared among people, it follows a certain pattern. So actions will also be patterned. But culture, again, it is dualistic in nature. All these patterns, they are dualistic in nature. But these things are manifested not at one level, but at many levels, at around 5 levels. That is what Parsons talks about. So all these 5 levels, they basically poses as a kind of dilemma for the person. For that, the actor has to make a choice between these dilemmas. So he has to resolve these dilemmas in the course of his action. Now, what are these 5 dilemmas? These things are actually referred to as pattern variables. 5 pattern variables are there. Actor has to resolve it and he has to take some action. So we will see what are these dilemmas, how are they manifested. First dilemma that the actor might face is particularism versus universalism. Whether to judge or evaluate someone on the basis of a particularistic characteristic or in a general criteria. So you're judging someone or something on the basis of a general criteria or on the criteria unique to the person. For example, if you are writing a letter to your friend, so in that case, it will be a very particularistic criteria. You will address it as dear friend. But let's say you are a district collector now, you are basically coming up with some sort of office order. So in that case, you will mention to whom it may concern, because it is now addressed to larger category of people. Similarly, if a doctor is operating on a patient, patient, okay, what is the criteria? So it is a general criteria. But if the doctor is operating on his or her relative, then in this case, it will be a very unique criteria. You might give some sort of preference over there. So you have to decide how you are going to act, how you are going to treat someone, treat a phenomenon or an individual, unique to that person or general criteria. The second thing here is performance versus quality. Whether you are judging a person for what he or she does or on his or her personal characteristics. For example, many times in India, especially in rural India now also, women might be abused by their husbands. There will be instances of domestic violence, but still the female might consider her husband as a pati parmeshwar, devta, god, everything. So what is happening here? That female is not treating that person on the basis of his performance, rather, okay? For his quality, quality is he's my husband, he's like God, he's divine for me. So whether you are treating someone on the basis of what it does means, for example, here you're not considering that this person is beating you, you're not considering that, you're just considering that he's your husband. So that criteria is there. How an employer behaves towards a worthless employee, or how the same employer will behave towards a worthless son, they will be different. Towards a worthless employee, again, he might start questioning him, he might throw him out of the organization. But even if his son is worthless, this thing will not be there. So here the quality criteria comes into being. The son is different from the employee, so there is some qualitative differences here. The next pattern variable he talks about is effective neutrality or effectivity. So your behavior without involvement of feelings, versus your behavior which has some emotional reason behind that. For example, if an air hostess provides food in the aircraft, now if a passenger does not eat the food, the air hostess will not feel bad about it. But if the air hostess is serving food to her own son and the son does not eat the food, she might feel bad or she might feel concerned about it. So effective neutrality is when there is no emotion here, just it is an instrumental reason. Air hostess has a responsibility to take care of the guest, and that is what she did for her part. But if that guest is not reciprocating back, you have to be neutral in that scenario. But if the child is not reciprocating back, then this component comes here. How a doctor behaves, what is the kind of emotions a doctor will have, or what is the kind of thing that is happening within the doctor in case he is seeing his own mother dying. But he might be seeing multiple patients dying. So effectivity in the first case, his own mother is dying. Effective neutrality when it is coming to the case of patients. Another kind of dilemma that the actor can face is the dilemma between specificity and diffuseness. Now, when we mean specificity, that means you are engaged. The actor is engaged only for a specific purpose. When we say diffuseness, that means you are engaged across a wide range of activity. For example, if a doctor is there, now when he's treating the patient, he's only talking with him about the health aspects of the patient, of the individual. But when the doctor is coming back to his home, he might have a son, he might have a daughter. With them, he is talking about all areas of activities. He might ask the children about their education, what about problems they're facing in the school, whether they have food or not, any issue they're facing, what kind of entertainment they want over the weekend. So all these things. So you are related with your children in a diffuse manner. Concern for a father will be diffuse manner, but the same father, if he's a boss in an organization, towards his employee, towards his staff, it will be a very specific kind of relation. So again, you have to decide, you have to play different roles in society, whether you are playing this role or you are playing this role. You have to find that out. Next dilemma here is self-orientation or collective orientation. Now, what is the behavior of an employee who keeps on switching jobs, from one organization to another organization, keeps switching jobs? So again, it will be more self-orientation. He's looking for his own interest. He wants to excel in his own life. So that's the reason he feels it's better. But what about the behavior of a soldier who gives his life for the nation? So it is collective orientation. So the difference here is egoistic versus altruistic. So these are the different kind of pattern variables. The actor in a situation has to make a choice between these kind of pattern variables. Now, Parsons calls certain variables as the modality of the object, and he calls certain variables as the modality of the actor. For example, particularism versus universalism, performance versus quality, he calls it modality of the object. And effective neutrality versus effectivity, specificity versus diffuseness, self-orientation versus collective orientation, he calls it modality of the actor. Now, another way also we can classify this is in the form of Gemen's chart and Gesell's chart, as given by Freud and Donis. So particularism, quality, effectivity, diffuseness, collective orientation, all these things will come under Gemen's chart. Well, Gesell's chart will include universalism, performance, effective neutrality, specificity, self-orientation. So when I'm saying this, please try to relate with things that we have talked about in the introduction to Thinker section, where we discussed about Gemen's chart and Gesell's chart. So this is about pattern variables. Now we will just briefly analyze what we have been studying till now. So when it comes to this particular chapter, Parsons focused a lot on building theory. So all these things are theory. We are not seeing any practical application of these things. When we study about Durkheim, what he's studying, he's applying it. For example, he's creating rules of social method, and you see that application in his study of suicide. So it's quite easy to relate. When it comes to Parsons, since they're all theories, it sometimes becomes difficult to understand. So that is the reason, from time to time, when you're reading also, just have a reality check. How much have you proceeded? How all these things are linked to one another? And also try to make a mind map if it's possible. What are the things he's taught, and how from one phase he's shifted to another phase. So we'll just look at the things that he has talked about till now. So what he's saying, he initially talked about the voluntaristic aspect of social action. He's saying that when it comes to human beings, when they're in society, they act, and when they're acting, they're giving certain meanings to their behavior. So this is social action. So some meaning is there, some motive is there, and we need to understand this human action, social action, at the level of the meanings. But later on, he's somewhere drifting now, and he's believing that culture is basically deciding the choices actors has. So culture is now playing a very important role now. Second part he talks about that, how value orientation is impacting you. He's getting impacted by the findings of Durkheim and findings of Sigmund Freud, and he's saying that it is a culture, it is a pattern culture, shared meanings, norms, values. They are the ones who are influencing you. Superego influences the need. Urges are constrained by the norms. Same thing, culture is impacting the choice of an actor. So he's now started focusing on the macro level. Okay, he's neglecting the macro level analysis. Macro level means you're looking at the pattern aspects of culture. Micro level means you're looking at the individual subjective experiences. So initially he's starting with the idea of reconciling idealistic and positive schools. You remember he discussed about utilitarianism, discussed about idealism, discussed about this positive school, and he's saying that we found out the merits and demerits of all these things, and he's saying that we need to take into consideration the individual meanings. But at the same time, we should make a theory which should be general. But again, here there was a challenge that it cannot be completely general, but we should strive to make a general theory so that we can compare it across society, so that it is applicable across societies. So eventually, what is happening here is he's again moving to the positive side, where he's saying that culture is shaping an individual's action. So this is what we have covered till now. The next thing Parsons tries to study is order and equilibrium. Now Parsons tries to find out how equilibrium is maintained in a system. He feels the answer lies in structural function analysis. A.R. Brown, Malinowski, they also talked about it. The state of equilibrium that is there among organisms. Organisms, they are again divided into multiple parts, and among these parts there is some sort of equilibrium. But Parsons varies from these thinkers, Malinowski, A.R. Brown, in the sense that he believes that this equilibrium is not static. They believe that it is static. He feels that this equilibrium is dynamic. And he calls it dynamic structural function analysis. We'll understand what we mean by equilibrium, we'll understand what we mean by this dynamic equilibrium, and whether equilibrium can be achieved. Or in case like, we are not able to achieve equilibrium, what we can achieve. We'll understand all these dimensions in presentation. So the question here is, what is the reason for this dynamics? Why everything is so dynamic? Why it is not static? So two things here. There are internal dynamics. So within a system also there will be subsystems. Within them also there will be some interconnections, and because of which there can be flux. Apart from that, any system is there. It will have an environment. There can be some sort of stimuli from the outside as well. So there will be some flux from the external situation also. So dynamics is a result of both these things: internal dynamics as well as from the external situation. But the system will always try to gain equilibrium. It will try to make some adjustments and it will try to gain some equilibrium. He's talking about three things here. Every system has some needs, which we already discussed. One of the features of the system was needs. It can be universal needs, it can be dynamic needs. So every system has some needs. It has some functional specific. Every system is again further divided into smaller parts, and these parts are trying to fulfill the needs. And another aspect that is very important for the system is this dynamic equilibrium can result when these parts are fulfilling the functions. They're fulfilling the needs. So system is divided into parts, system has some needs, and these parts are trying to fulfill the needs. If they're fulfilling the needs, there will be a state of dynamic equilibrium. And when we are saying needs, just keep in mind both the needs are there, universal needs as well as derived needs, but Parsons is focusing primarily on the general needs, universal needs, the needs which are there for each and every system. So now what we will do is, we will try to understand what are some of the universal needs of a system. And what we will do, we'll try to understand it from the features of the system. So from the features of the system, how can we find out what are some of the universal needs for any system? So just think about those features that we had discussed a few moments back. Any system is there, it will have an environment. The system is here, it is going to have an environment. So there is a boundary, and then beyond the boundary there is an environment. Now the system is in a symbiotic relationship with the environment. So it has to maintain this symbiotic relationship. For that, again, it might have to change itself, or sometimes it might have to change the environment. Sometimes what can happen is it might have to change both the things. So what we are trying to do here is we're trying to adapt yourself. The system is trying to adapt itself with the environment, and for this process, system itself can change, the environment can change, it can do some changes in the environment, or both can change. So this is one kind of need, the need for adaptation. Now system, in case it has to survive, it has to mobilize resources, it has to channelize its energy, and all these things will be oriented towards a particular kind of activity. So system is a goal-oriented activity. So goal orientation is again another function or another functional prerequisite, another need of a system. System is a unified whole. It is made up of different parts. So there is a particular structure over there. the system has to ensure that these parts remain together, or else the system will disintegrate. There is some interdependence among these parts. That is also the reason why all these parts are important. So, system has to ensure that these parts remain together, they remain integrated. So again, integration is another important function of a system. Functional prerequisite for a system. In a system, these parts are again linked in a particular manner. There's a particular structure over there, there's a particular pattern over there. They're connected in a particular manner. So this particular pattern also needs to be maintained. There has to be pattern maintenance. For that, again, you need to create values. Certain common norms you have to create. So this kind of functional prerequisite is called latency. Some hidden functions also have to be carried out such that these patterns, whatever is there, whatever structure is there, they remain like that. They don't get disrupted. So any system will have all these requirements. They are all functional prerequisites, universal requirements. Requirement for adaptation, requirement for goal orientation, requirement for adaptation, and for integration, and for latency. So it has been summarized in this particular slide. Just go through what we have just done it. What are the adaptation needs? So adaptation needs, through this, the system adjusts to the environment, and the environment also adapts to the needs. Goal attainment, it is through this thing that you define the goals and you mobilize resources to achieve these goals. The system mobilizes all these resources, channels, energy to attain these goals. Now, also the system has to protect itself from sudden changes. It also has to maintain the solidity. So, and all the parts are together. There is some sort of cohesion in the system. So that is through integration. At the same time, you have to provide certain values by which patterns are maintained, tensions can be managed. So that is through the latency function. So these are all the functional prerequisites of any system. So from the definition of the system, from the features of the system, you can arrive at this. And again, these needs, we can further classify them. For example, certain needs are external needs. They're related to the environment. For example, the need for adaptation, the need for goal attainment. They can be classified as external needs. Some needs which are related to the internal organization of the system, they are referred to as the internal needs. Example, integration and latency. These external needs can also be referred to as Gesellschaft functions. Internal needs can be referred to as Gemeinschaft. So the definition or the classification given there for different problems, we are trying to use it again. What is important for us to understand is what are these needs. Okay, this classification is fine, but we need to understand what are these needs. That is more important for you. Now, what next Parsons is trying to do is, he's trying to analyze social action as a system. If you analyze social action as a system, it can be further divided into 4 subsystems. So if you take social action as a system, okay, this system will also have certain requirements, and these requirements are being filled by certain subsystems. So he's dividing social action into certain subsystems. For example, he's saying, in any social action, the organismic system, it handles adaptation. The adaptation is handled by the organismic system. The goal attainment function is handled by the personality system. The social system ensures that there is a certain level of integration. And the latency function is handled by cultural system. Cultural system, it creates values, and these values are basically ensuring that the patterns that is there, it remains like that, and tensions whatever are there are taken care of. So if you observe social action as a system, these will be the subsystems over there. So what you can possibly do is, you can just find out this, you can make these kind of maps, relations. So on one side, you just mention the different kind of roles, different kind of functional prerequisites, and again, on this side you can mention what are the system. Adaptation is being handled by the organismic system, goal orientation is being handled by the personality system, integration is being handled by the social system, and latency is being handled by the cultural system. So these kind of relations. So this then can be mapped like this. If social action is considered to be a system. So Parsons says that social action is the subject of social sciences, of all social sciences. But he says if sociology has to be considered, has to be distinguished from other social sciences, then social system should be the field of inquiry. We need to understand social system. There were some four systems, right? And then there was one social system. So what he says is, if sociology is a separate discipline, then try to understand what is social system. And he's saying the other systems, they are the ecology of sociology. For example, psychology, biology, anthropology, and linguistics, they're all the ecology of sociology. Psychology is the personality system, biology will be the organismic system, cultural system will be the anthropology and linguistics. So we need to study social system for creating a separate branch of sociology. So the next thing Parsons talks about is social system. How he's coming to the concept of social system. So from social action, he's coming to social system. See, just now we have seen how social action can be considered as a system and how it can be divided into all these small systems. So always keep in mind when we are referring to system, it's just a way of looking at things. It is a methodology by which we look at things. When we are saying look at social action, look at the subsystems of social action, what we mean is how a social action can also be looked at from systemic point of view and how you can again divide the different parts here. So now what we try to do from the social action, we try to understand what a social system is. Now, social action, what is it? Social action means it is a meaningful response to an external stimuli by an actor in a situation. So what the actor is actually doing here, the actor is basically playing a role in that situation. What are these roles? See, roles are nothing but a culturally prescribed definition of a behavior. So you are expected to carry out these roles. When I say this thing, you are expected to behave in a culturally prescribed manner. Some culturally prescribed behavioral expectations are there from it. It also carries with it some knowledge and value. So when you are fulfilling the role, you should have some knowledge and value with you. Apart from that, a role also includes with it some sanctions. That means if you are not able to fulfill a particular role, if you are not able to meet the expectations, there can be some sanctions on it. Also, these roles will also always involve reciprocity. If I am performing a role, then there will be some other reciprocal relationship as well. For example, if I am a teacher, if I want to be a teacher, I need to have some students. So there is this reciprocal relationship. My ability to fulfill my role will also be dependent on their ability to fulfill my expectation. So both things are there. So this reciprocal relationship, it leads to what we call as double contingency. Or it's also called mutual interdependence. I depend on you, you will also depend on me. So this leads to a mutual steering mechanism. I told you role also involves sanctions. If I am not able to fulfill my role, you might impose sanctions. If they are not able to fulfill their role, I might impose sanctions. So as a result of which there is this mutual steering mechanism. Same thing happens at the level of the society as well. Okay. The ego and the super ego, the alter ego, the ego, they also follow a particular pattern. Because of these double contingency, they're following a particular pattern, as a result of which some cultural patterns might shape up. So all these things you will find in this particular screen. So how social action means, how an actor is fulfilling his or her role, and what is the meaning of role, how it is culturally prescribed, how it involves knowledge and values, how it also involves sanctions, how it involves reciprocity, and then we say reciprocity, how it leads to double contingency, how there is mutual interdependence, and if there is mutual interdependence, it leads to mutual steering mechanism, and as a consequence of which cultural patterns are evolving over a period of time. And this plurality of cultural patterns that we have, it leads to the formation of social systems. So just if you have to summarize, look at the screen here. What is social system? It is a network of relationship between people and between groups. It has multiple actors. Social action is the basic unit of social life. Every society has some norms for every situation. The norms, they guide the behavior of the actor. There are certain role expectations, culturally shaped behavioral expectations are there. And these roles also have within some sanctions. There is reciprocity. If I am carrying out a role, someone else is also doing something, someone else also has to be there. This reciprocal relationship leads to mutual interdependence, it leads to double contingency. And this leads to a mutual steering mechanism. So all these things can again pattern a social action. So this is social system in a nutshell. Now in the social system, there are again different kind of needs, there are different functional prerequisites. How these functional prerequisites are being fulfilled. So there is economic system, there is political system, there is social community, and there is also religious system. Now whatever adaptation requirements are there. See, again, social system is that it will have multiple parts. It has to work with the environment. It has a boundary, it has to work with the environment, it has to work with the society. So it also has to perform certain adaptation needs. All these things are fulfilled by the economic system. Now, it also has to attain something. Okay, it will have some objective in mind. It will have some collective objectives. It has to mobilize the society's actors. It has to mobilize the resources. Then only it can attain the goals. All these things are carried out by the political system. Then there are different members in the society. We have to ensure that there is cooperation among these members. There is the conflict between the members needs to be reduced. So integration function is important. Here the society and community can play a role. Similarly, you have to create values within the society. Value commitments are important for ensuring patent maintenance, for ensuring that there is no tension or whatever tension is there, you're able to diffuse it. So latency function is very important. So it is now taken care by the fiduciary system. And fiduciary system will constitute of education, religion, family. They are the ones who inculcate different kind of values. They are the ones who strengthen the values. So at the level of social system, the different needs are met by all these things. Adaptation needs are met by the economic system, how it links the environment with the society, the goal attainment, the larger goals of the society, they are created, how we are mobilizing resources. All these things are handled by the political system. Just think about it. Our constitution, it will have certain objectives. Our legal judicial mechanism, they are also trying to achieve these objectives. So goal attainment is the forte of the political system. Integration is being ensured by the societal community. Latency functions is ensured by the fiduciary system, which consists of education, religion, family. So at the level of the social system, these are the institutions, these are the subsystems which are fulfilling all these roles. Now, also, there can be flow from one system to another. Output for one system can be input for another system. For example, if there is, let's say, some sort of conflict within the society. Let's say there is a dispute between different classes in the society, between the laborers and the workers. So laborers feel that they are not getting enough money for the kind of work they put. Their wages are extremely low. So here what can happen is, so the problem is at the level of integration, societal community is forte. But here political system can play a role. Political system can make laws, it can create some ceilings, that means that the minimum wages you have to pay more than that. So whatever law political system is making, again, it can resolve these conflicts. So it is also leading to resolution of integration. And at the end of the day, political system also gets benefited because now they get the votes. So input for one system can be output for another system. So keep this in mind. Okay, so all of them are connected together. The next question here is, these are all the parts of the social system. Can we ensure equilibrium among these parts? Again, perfect equilibrium we might not be able to achieve, but we can definitely achieve a working order. That is what Parsons is saying. Okay, perfect equilibrium will not be there, but there is a possibility of achieving a working order. But yes, he says that there can be multiple problems. You can face multiple problems at different points of time. For example, there can be a problem at the level of the interaction. There might not be a common value consensus among the society. Your value, my value might be different. If all of us have similar values, then there can be a consensus over there. But the values might not be similar. For example, the value of the terrorist and the value of the society might be different. Society wants to preserve unity among people. Terrorist wants to kill people. He wants to create terror among the people. He wants to create panic among the people. He wants to divide the society. So there can be these problems sometimes. But here again, if the fiduciary system is strong enough, it can strengthen the value consensus. Sometimes there can be some other problems. There can be a problem of clash of interest between the individual and the collectivity. So we can achieve a working order, but there can be different kind of problems. So Parsons identifies these kind of problems that can be there. For example, there can be a problem at the level of interaction. See, we are assuming that the entire society has similar kind of value consensus values. So if similar kind of values, there will be value consensus. But it might not be the case. You might not have the same value consensus in the entire society. For example, some members, his value consensus will be different, his values will be different, the society's value will be different. Society wants to stay with stability. There has to be cohesion over there. But terrorists might want to create fear. He might want to create panic. He might want to divide the society. But again, Parsons is giving a solution to this. He's saying that if you can strengthen the fiduciary system, then the value consensus can be strengthened. Now, there can be a problem because of clash of interest between individuals and the collectivity. So this is the motivational problem for it. What is good for one might not be good for others. Take the example of Vijay Mallya, let's say. What was good for him might not have been good for others. The way he is amassing wealth, it is at the cost of the society. So it might have been good for him. He might have funded his own businesses, but others are not getting benefited because of it. Others are actually losing it. So clash of interest between individuals and the collectivity. One of the mechanisms that Parsons suggests how we can reconcile these clash of interests is democracy. For example, there can be some people who might feel aggrieved in the society, but they feel that the resources are controlled by someone else and we are not getting the benefits. It can lead to these regional feelings. Certain areas in our country, they feel that they are deprived. They do not have any control over the resources they have. So there are mechanisms by which you can resolve it. Democracy is one of the ways by which you can resolve it. So because of democracy, universal franchise is there, people over there can also participate in elections and they can represent their own interest. Their own interest, collective interest is somehow getting resolved, reconciled in this process. Another problem he feels is there can be a problem because of the incompatibility between subsystems. We observe there are different subsystems. So sometimes in one system if there is any change, other system can get impacted in the process. For example, if the society is moving towards industrialization, it can have an impact on the family system. If you are moving towards industrialization, again, let's say this goal element function, the goal is to mobilize resources for the standards of living or ensuring this much of output. Now for this, what will happen? What when you are mobilizing resources, you are training resources. When you are training resources, that means you are asking people to come out of the household, go to specialized institutions, train themselves and get themselves trained. And after the training, they will again start working somewhere else. So they have to move out of their houses. If they are moving out of their houses, it can lead to breakdown of the joint family to nuclear families. So one function, one part of the system, there is a change, it is impacting another part of the system. So one subsystem can impact another subsystem. That is what we are observing here. Similarly, if you are providing education again will fall under that cultural system by which latency function that is being carried out for this. So when you are providing education, people are becoming skilled, their expectations is also increasing. But if the economic system does not improve at the same level, it is not able to create jobs, then there will be challenge. People are educated, people are skilled, but they don't have jobs. So sometimes between different subsystems also there can be different issues. So he's saying that these problems can be there, which we need to resolve. So this is about the concept of social system. Understand what is social action, what are the components of social action, how the actor is playing a role, what is a role, and with any role there is sanctions, and whenever there is any role there is reciprocity. If there is reciprocity, it leads to double contingency, and it leads to a mutual steering mechanism. If mutual steering mechanism is there, you can form patterns. If patterns are there, again, they become institutionalized, it leads to social system. What are the different goals, or what are the different functional prerequisites of the social system? Adaptation, integration, all these things are also the prerequisites of the social system. How they are being met by different systems, economic system, political system, social community, and fiduciary system.